There was a time when a small red and white cookbook sat in nearly every American kitchen. Inside it were simple, budget-friendly suppers from Betty Crocker that promised something magical: dinner on the table in just 10 minutes. No gourmet ingredients. No complicated steps. Just practical meals designed for busy families stretching every dollar. These dishes once filled plates during tight weeks and long workdays, yet somehow they quietly disappeared. Tonight, we're opening that forgotten chapter again, dusting off 10 cheap vintage suppers that were fast, comforting, and surprisingly clever. And you may be shocked at how easy they still are today. The first supper sounds almost too simple to matter. Yet in the 1950s, it was a weeknight hero hiding in plain sight: creamed tuna on toast. Open a can, stir a sauce, pour it over crisp bread, and dinner was done before the evening radio program ended. In post-war America, budgets were tight despite growing optimism. Canned tuna was affordable, shelf-stable, and proudly promoted as modern convenience. In countless Betty Crocker booklets, homemakers were encouraged to keep a few cans tucked away for emergencies. But this wasn't emergency food. It was comfort disguised as thrift. The method was brilliantly fast. A pat of butter melted in a skillet, flour stirred in, milk poured slowly to create a smooth white sauce. Salt, pepper, and sometimes a handful of frozen peas gave it color. Then the tuna, flaked gently with a fork, was folded into the steaming mixture. Within minutes, thick, creamy filling was ladled over golden toast squares cut neatly on the diagonal. For families rushing between factory shifts, school homework, and evening chores, this dish felt reliable. Children remember the way the sauce soaked into the bread, soft in the center yet crisp at the edges. Parents appreciated that it could feed 4 people for pennies. No oven required. No elaborate planning. Just pantry staples working together. So why did it vanish? Perhaps because it was too humble. Too ordinary. As flashy casseroles and restaurant takeout grew popular, creamed tuna on toast quietly slipped from the table. But once upon a time, this 10-minute supper proved that simplicity could carry a household through another long day and leave everyone full, warm, and ready for tomorrow. The second supper once carried a name that sounded grander than it truly was: Skillet Sloppy Joes. Long before drive-through windows dotted American highways, this quick stovetop sandwich delivered bold flavor in barely 10 minutes. In the 1950s and early 1960s, ground beef was one of the most dependable proteins a family could afford. A single pound, stretched with ketchup, mustard, and a splash of Worcestershire sauce, could feed an entire table. Vintage cookbook pages encouraged home cooks to brown and serve, turning simple pantry staples into something that felt lively and new. The method was almost rhythmic. Ground beef hit the hot skillet with a sharp sizzle. A chopped onion followed, softening in the rendered fat. Then came the sweet tangy mixture: ketchup for body, a spoon of brown sugar for balance, mustard for bite. Within minutes, the sauce thickened, clinging to every crumb of meat. No simmering for hours. No complicated layering. Just one pan and a wooden spoon. To children, it felt slightly messy and therefore exciting. The filling spilled from soft hamburger buns, dripping onto wax paper or chipped dinner plates. To parents, it was dependable and filling, stretching a modest grocery budget without complaint. Yet as frozen dinners and fast food chains rose in popularity, the homemade sloppy joe began to seem old-fashioned. Its humble ingredients couldn't compete with flashy packaging or television commercials promising something new and improved. Still, this 10-minute skillet supper once brought families together after long workdays and little league practices. It proved that flavor didn't require extravagance, just a hot pan, a few affordable ingredients, and the comfort of knowing dinner would be ready before anyone had time to ask what was taking so long. Part 3 takes us back to a dish that felt almost elegant, yet cost next to nothing: ham and peas in cream sauce over biscuits. It sounded refined, but it was born from leftovers and practicality. In the years after World War II, wasting food simply wasn't an option. A small piece of baked ham from Sunday supper could stretch into Monday night's meal with surprising ease. Vintage Betty Crocker leaflets encouraged homemakers to refresh leftovers, turning yesterday's roast into something that felt entirely new. The preparation moved quickly. A saucepan warmed on the stove while butter melted into a glossy pool. Flour whisked in, forming a pale roux. Milk followed, transforming the mixture into a velvety cream sauce in just a few steady stirs. Diced ham and a handful of canned or frozen peas were folded in, heating through in minutes. Meanwhile, store-bought biscuits, often the new refrigerated kind that promised convenience, baked or reheated until golden. When the creamy ham mixture was spooned over split biscuits, it looked abundant. Steam rose from the plate, carrying the scent of salt, butter, and warm bread. For families watching every dollar, it felt resourceful rather than restrictive. Children loved the soft biscuits soaking up the sauce. Parents appreciated how a single leftover could feed everyone again. So why did this supper fade away? Perhaps because leftovers lost their pride of place. As supermarkets expanded and abundance replaced frugality, the art of stretching one meal into another quietly slipped from daily life. Yet this 10-minute revival reminds us of something powerful: elegance doesn't require extravagance. Sometimes it's simply a matter of stirring yesterday's ham into a fresh cream sauce and serving it with warmth, gratitude, and a little ingenuity. Part 4 brings back a supper that once felt almost futuristic: beef and gravy over instant rice. In the 1960s, instant was the word of progress. If it saved time, it felt modern. And few things felt more modern than fluffy rice ready in 5 minutes. Ground beef browned quickly in a skillet, breaking into savory crumbles as it sizzled. A packet of brown gravy mix, another mid-century marvel, was whisked with water and poured directly into the pan. Within moments, the mixture thickened into a glossy sauce that coated every bite of meat. Meanwhile, instant rice absorbed boiling water on the back burner, steaming itself tender without fuss. This wasn't gourmet cooking. It was efficient cooking. Betty Crocker-era meal planning often revolved around speed and budget, especially as more women balanced household duties with part-time work or community commitments. A meal like this could be prepared between helping with homework and setting the table. The aroma was deeply comforting: rich beef, peppery gravy, and warm grains rising together in a cloud of steam. When spooned into bowls, the sauce seeped into the rice, creating a hearty texture that felt far more filling than its cost suggested. It was simple, dependable, and satisfying after a long day. Over time, instant products lost their novelty. Fresh herbs, global spices, and restaurant-inspired dishes began replacing these straightforward combinations. Beef and gravy over rice seemed too plain for a new generation seeking bold flavors. But once, this 10-minute supper symbolized convenience at its best. It proved that progress in the kitchen didn't have to mean complexity. Sometimes it meant opening a packet, browning a pound of beef, and placing a steaming bowl on the table before anyone even realized dinner had begun. Part 5 takes us to a supper that felt almost playful: egg and olive salad sandwiches. It wasn't hot, it wasn't fancy, but it was quick, filling, and remarkably affordable. In mid-century kitchens, hard-boiled eggs were a quiet staple. They could be prepared ahead of time, tucked into the refrigerator, and transformed into a meal at a moment's notice. Vintage Betty Crocker pamphlets often suggested keeping eggs on hand for sandwiches and suppers alike, especially during weeks when meat prices crept too high. The preparation moved swiftly. Hard-boiled eggs were chopped fine with a fork, their bright yolks crumbling into soft whites. A spoonful of mayonnaise bound everything together, while sliced green olives, pimento stuffed, if you had them, added a salty bite and a touch of color. A dash of mustard, a sprinkle of pepper, and the mixture was ready. Spread thickly between slices of soft white bread, the filling created a sandwich that felt surprisingly rich. Some families toasted the bread lightly, others served it plain with a handful of potato chips or a scoop of canned fruit cocktail on the side. It was the kind of supper children could help prepare, standing on tiptoe at the counter, carefully stirring the bowl. So why did it fade? Perhaps because egg salad became associated with picnics and lunches rather than dinner tables. As heartier meat-based meals gained popularity, this humble sandwich seemed too modest to headline a supper. Yet for countless households watching their grocery budget, egg and olive salad sandwiches were proof that dinner didn't require a stove at all. In less than 10 minutes, a few simple ingredients could come together, reminding families that thrift and comfort often shared the very same plate. Part 6 revives a classic that many modern kitchens have forgotten: chicken à la king. Despite its fancy-sounding name, this creamy, colorful dish was designed for speed, thrift, and maximum comfort. Emerging in the 1950s, chicken à la king capitalized on the era's love of convenience foods. Leftover cooked chicken, or sometimes canned chicken, was perfectly acceptable. A quick sauce of butter, flour, and milk transformed it into a rich, velvety filling. Green and red bell peppers, peas, or pimentos added both color and texture, turning a humble skillet into something festive. The preparation was deceptively simple. Melt butter in a pan, stir in flour, and whisk in milk until smooth. Fold in diced chicken and vegetables, seasoning lightly with salt, pepper, and a pinch of paprika. Within 10 minutes, the sauce thickened to perfection, coating every piece of chicken in creamy goodness. Traditionally, it was served over toast points, rice, or even baked pastry shells, giving families variety with minimal extra effort. Children were enchanted by its bright colors and creamy texture, while parents appreciated the speed and flexibility. The dish could feed four without breaking the grocery budget, and it offered a sense of sophistication that made a weekday dinner feel special. Yet chicken à la king gradually disappeared from most tables. Perhaps it was the rise of casseroles, frozen convenience meals, or the misconception that it was outdated. The truth is, its quick, comforting nature is timeless. Reintroducing this 10-minute supper reminds us why it once mattered. It wasn't just about chicken or cream, it was about creating a sense of care and indulgence in an era when time and money were precious. With a hot skillet, a few simple ingredients, and a little patience, families could enjoy a meal that was fast, frugal, and undeniably satisfying. Part 7 brings us to a supper that was as quick as it was satisfying: ham and egg skillet. On busy weeknights, this one-pan wonder promised a hot, filling meal in just 10 minutes, with ingredients many households already had on hand. In post-war kitchens, leftovers weren't just practical, they were celebrated. A small chunk of ham from Sunday's dinner could be chopped into cubes and transformed into something fresh and exciting. Eggs, inexpensive and versatile, provided protein and texture, while butter or a splash of oil brought it all together in a golden, sizzling pan. The method was effortless. Dice the ham and toss it into a hot skillet. As it browned, crack in a few eggs, letting the whites set around the cubes of meat while the yolks remained soft. A pinch of salt and pepper, maybe a sprinkle of paprika if you had it, and dinner was nearly done. For a heartier meal, some families stirred in leftover vegetables, corn, peas, or green beans, adding color and extra nutrients. Within minutes, a simple, savory skillet supper was ready. Children loved scooping up bites of ham wrapped in soft, slightly runny egg. Parents admired the speed and versatility, knowing it could be served with toast, biscuits, or even leftover rice. It was a dish born from necessity yet elevated by care and timing. So why did it disappear? As casseroles and prepackaged meals became more popular, quick skillets like this one seemed too modest for the modern table. But in its day, the ham and egg skillet proved that simplicity didn't mean sacrificing flavor or comfort. 10 minutes, a single pan, and a few humble ingredients were all it took to create a meal that nourished, satisfied, and reminded families of the beauty in everyday cooking. Part 8 takes us to a supper that felt both clever and comforting: cheese and potato melt. It was one of those quick weekday meals that promised warmth, fullness, and a little indulgence, all in under 10 minutes. In mid-century kitchens, Potatoes were a staple for stretching meals without stretching the budget. Mashed, sliced, or grated, they paired perfectly with a thick, tangy cheese sauce, often made from a simple roux of butter, flour, and milk. Betty Crocker's recipes recommended using whatever cheese was on hand, processed slices, sharp cheddar, or even a sprinkle of Swiss, turning basic pantry staples into something rich and satisfying. Preparation was simple yet clever. Thinly sliced potatoes, sometimes pre-cooked or even leftover, were layered in a skillet or shallow pan. The cheese sauce was poured over them, bubbling immediately when the pan hit the heat. A quick cover on the stove or under the broiler melted the cheese just enough to create a golden, gooey topping. In 10 minutes or less, a humble mix of potatoes, butter, and cheese transformed into a creamy, savory dish that felt indulgent without breaking the bank. Families loved it for its comfort factor. Children would scrape at the melted cheese with spoons, laughing as it stretched and stuck. Parents appreciated that it was inexpensive, quick, and could be paired with a side of canned vegetables or a simple salad to complete the meal. As new convenience foods and frozen entrees grew popular, cheese and potato melt quietly vanished from many tables. Its simplicity, once celebrated, became overlooked. Yet revisiting it reminds us that some of the most satisfying meals are the ones that require little more than creativity, warmth, and a touch of patience. 10 minutes was all it took to turn humble ingredients into a comforting supper everyone could enjoy. Part 9 revives a supper that once felt like a weekday luxury, Hamburger macaroni skillet. It was quick, filling, and designed to satisfy hungry families with minimal fuss, ready in just 10 minutes. In post-war America, macaroni was an inexpensive pantry staple, easy to store and quick to cook. Combined with ground beef, a splash of tomato sauce, and a few seasonings, it became a hearty meal that stretched every dollar. Betty Crocker's guides often encouraged this type of one-pan meal for busy evenings, emphasizing speed without sacrificing flavor. The preparation was straightforward. Ground beef sizzled in a hot skillet until browned, releasing a savory aroma that filled the kitchen. Finely chopped onions or bell peppers could be added for extra flavor and texture. Meanwhile, macaroni cooked quickly in boiling water or was sometimes pre-cooked from the previous night. Once tender, the pasta was folded into the beef along with tomato sauce, salt, and pepper. A sprinkle of shredded cheese on top could melt in seconds, creating a gooey, comforting layer that pulled everything together. Children loved the mixture of tender noodles, rich sauce, and savory meat. Parents appreciated how easy it was to assemble, requiring just a single skillet and minimal cleanup. It was nourishing, affordable, and could feed an entire family in a fraction of the time of traditional meals. Yet Hamburger macaroni skillet disappeared from modern tables as frozen dinners and prepackaged convenience foods gained popularity. What was once a weekday hero became a forgotten relic of simpler times. Bringing it back now reminds us of the ingenuity of mid-century cooking. 10 minutes, a few basic ingredients, and a hot pan were enough to create a meal that was hearty, satisfying, and capable of bringing families together around the table, just like it did decades ago. Part 10 concludes our journey through quick, nostalgic suppers with a dish that was deceptively simple yet deeply satisfying: tuna noodle casserole. It was the ultimate 10-minute weekday meal, relying on pantry staples and minimal effort to deliver comfort in every bite. In the 1950s, canned tuna and egg noodles were common household items, affordable and long-lasting. Betty Crocker encouraged homemakers to combine them with a simple creamy sauce, made from butter, flour, and milk, and a sprinkle of cheese or breadcrumbs for texture. The goal was efficiency, a hot, nourishing meal on the table before the evening routine spiraled out of control. Preparation was quick. Cooked noodles mixed with flaked tuna and a handful of frozen peas, then stirred into a creamy sauce, creating a luscious, savory filling. The mixture could go straight into a skillet or shallow casserole dish. A light topping of shredded cheese or even crushed crackers added a golden finish in mere minutes. Unlike baked casseroles that required an hour in the oven, this version relied on stovetop timing, making it perfect for busy families. Children loved the soft noodles mingled with creamy tuna, peas providing just the right pop of color and texture. Parents loved the affordability and speed. A single can of tuna could feed 4, with leftovers easily reheated the next day. Though tuna noodle casserole faded from mainstream tables as convenience foods and frozen meals dominated, its legacy remains. This 10-minute supper was more than a recipe. It was a testament to resourcefulness, thrift, and care. Revisiting it today, we're reminded that the simplest meals often leave the deepest impressions. With just a few pantry staples, a hot pan, and a touch of love, families could enjoy a comforting, hearty supper, proof that convenience and flavor can coexist beautifully in one dish. And there you have it, 10 quick, budget-friendly Betty Crocker suppers that once filled American tables and now live only in memory. From creamy tuna to skillet hamburgers, each dish tells a story of ingenuity, thrift, and the comforting rhythm of mid-century family life. These recipes remind us that good food doesn't need to be complicated or expensive. It just needs care, a few simple ingredients, and a dash of creativity. If you loved revisiting these forgotten favorites, hit that subscribe button and join our community of nostalgic food lovers. Let's bring more lost recipes back to life, together.